All right, what's happening? I want to say hello to everyone. Thanks for tuning in for what we're hoping to make a weekly Wednesday night stream. I'll talk to y'all in just a minute. We're going to play another tune. We're getting some things ironed out.
It's delayed.
So, I'll talk to y'all in a minute, but right now I'm just going to play some. So, thank y'all for tuning in. All right, what's happening, everybody? Hello. So yes, here we are, another Wednesday night. I want to say hello. I want to say welcome back. Last week, we were interrupted by Hurricane Zeta. My heart goes out to those who were affected heavily by it. This is the first time in my adult life that I can remember the eye of a storm coming right over the city. And it was very eerie and it was pretty creepy. My wife and I went outside and the sky was orange. Barometric pressure dropped and I could feel it and everything just got super still. The rain stopped, the wind stopped. And I mean, it was pretty creepy, but we could have fared much worse. There were a lot of downed power lines, a lot of people without power for many days, some property damage, a lot of downed trees, but it could have been much, much worse. So we are feeling grateful that it was not worse than it was. So it's good to be back. Good to see y'all. And me and my trusty engineer, Nick Solnick, over here, we plan on being here on a weekly basis as much as we can. Nick just got a on-off microphone switch, so he can just stomp in and say hello. Just say hello.
Hi.
Hi. So there we go. That's that box. Lauren, if you're watching, Lauren says, "What is this? Another box showing up at the house?" Well, that was so that Nick can just step on and say hi, and he doesn't have to mess with the settings to turn on his lav mic.
I'll be chatting with everybody in the chat room, so if it says Stanton's chatting to you, it's me.
It's Nick. It's Nick. So he's fielding some of the questions and comments coming in. So let him rip. What I'm trying to do with these live streams is start off by playing some music for y'all. We may get to where we eventually have some special guests playing music in here, and two of those special guests that I eventually want to have in here, I will have the good fortune of playing Friday. We've been doing a happy hour at Tipitina's on the sidewalk. This week, coming up on Friday, it'll be 4 to 6, and that'll be Joe Ashlar and Danny Abel joining me. So I'll be playing outside of Tips on the sidewalk, and nobody will be allowed inside, but we will be serving beverages out of the side window. So trying to keep everybody safe while still letting y'all know we're alive and trying to keep things rolling and playing some music for y'all. So before we get too far into things, I do want to mention the virtual tip jar is open. It's in the description. And Nick and I are in here filming, recording, and I do want to say a lot of that filming is going towards the new Drum Academy, StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com, and there's a 14-day trial right there in the description. And if you've been wondering what I've been up to, I urge you to check that out. There's the shuffle course, 5-lesson shuffle course that Nick and I finished during this down quarantine period. I like to call it the world sabbatical. So we're trying to see a silver lining in this and try to come out of this having learned some new skills and being productive through all of this. So I like to maybe answer some questions about music in general. We don't want to get into drumming right away unless that's all the questions we have. But if there are people who are music fans, fans of Tips, fans of Galactic, fans of what I do, if you have any comments or questions, we'll see if there's any of those first before we start going completely down the drumming rabbit hole. So, Nick, are you seeing anything that we might want to answer or comment on? And can you give me that big screen back so I can see some of the some of the
Sorry, it's yes. Sorry, it's just
comments or questions coming in?
it's different screen. Different screen. There we go.
And thank you for.
Oh, he wants to know about our stream. Someone wants to know about our streaming setup.
And that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because I was just going to say thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you for being supportive. While not only do we keep trying to retain our musical abilities, but we also learn how to do live TV for you. So, someone asked about our streaming setup. I have to give shout out to Jim Toscano. He's a great drummer, great guy, and he has been serving as tech consultant to myself and several other drummers out there, and he's been fantastic. And what's interesting about the streaming situation is there's no real plug and play one size fits all situation yet. Unfortunately, there's no like iStream and you open the box and there are 3 cameras and a switcher and bam, you plug it into your Mac and you're ready to go. So Jim was very helpful in, first you got to decide, you got to figure out what you have already. So I had 2 Sony A6400s already, and with Nick's cameras we had 3 GoPros, and we were set up to film. And shout out to Max Cusimano and Nola Vid for helping me pick what cameras to buy to start filming lessons. But Max was smart enough, and Omar, and they were smart enough to look ahead and say, might you be streaming in the future? And this was a year and a half or 2 before we started streaming. I said, yes, I eventually want to stream, but we won't be streaming yet. So he said, well, then you've got to get these cameras that are going to allow you to run without shutting down while recording. Some cameras will shut down if it's not in record mode. So we needed cameras like that. Max helped me with that. And then Jim Toscano helped me with the whole streaming situation. He said, oh, you've got the Sony A6400s. He said, I think what you want to do is get the Roland VHD1, I think are the call letters, and it's a 4-camera switcher. And so we got that, and we're tapping into Ethernet, and we
Very
got,
important.
and we're recording.
Of the most importance is the Ethernet.
Yeah, very important is the Ethernet. And so we literally drilled a hole in a cinder block wall and are borrowing Ethernet from my brothers in Galactic. So that's how we are operating. I have this room which is next door to the Galactic studio, and we're literally drilling holes in walls and borrowing Ethernet to get this started. This is a pretty guerrilla operation to get started, and we're trying to dial it in as we go. Nick, you had something you were going to say?
Oh no, I could go into like super techie stuff, like things to look after for live streaming, but you pretty much touched on it.
Yeah, and we can get into that if we get more questions. Some of these people are just watching to be entertained, perhaps. Yeah. So we won't get too far into the streaming questions. But as they come in, we'll answer them. But that's what we're using.
I got some good ones so far.
Okay.
One person was asking about how Galactic picks their singers, like how you guys select your singers.
How we pick our singers, that's a great question. So we've been very fortunate to have worked with some incredible singers, starting with Theroux the Houseman to Cluet, and Robert and Jeff were going to see House singing with Michael Ward and the Reward at Benny's, which was an awesome dive blues bar in the 13th Ward at the corner of Valence and Camp. And I was going there and sitting in with JD and the Jammers and other bands and Russell Batiste and Dawson's Attack. And I was going there on a regular basis. Robert and Jeff were going there on a regular basis to hear Theroux. And they invited him to come to a rehearsal. We wrote some tunes, started doing some gigs together. Next thing you know, 7, 8 years later, we're playing, headlining the Warfield on New Year's Eve and playing Tipitinas. And so then from there, we did some collaborations with a bunch of MCs. And then vocally, we've been blessed to have Corey Glover, Cyril Neville, who I consider to be one of the greatest soul singers of all time. Obviously, Erica Falls most recently Jelly, also Macy Gray, Lyrics Born, Charlie Tuna, Boots Riley have all come out on the road with us for extended periods of time. So we've just been very, very fortunate. And each one of these singers have come to our attention via different ways, but once they come to our attention, then we're like, oh, this makes sense. This is the next logical step for us, right? Oh, Maggie Kerner, of course, came out with us for a while. And David Shaw came out with us for a while. So we've had some great singers, and it's each one comes to us in a slightly different way, but then it makes sense that this is the direction that we should follow for a while.
Let's see.
See, Nick, now that you've got your Switch and you're ready to go, you gotta
I
have
know. I
next
need to be
question.
ready to go. Okay,
Ready
next,
to roll.
Next question. Someone's asked if you ever bust on Bourbon Street.
Have I ever bust on?
I want to know, have you ever bussed on Bourbon Street? What's
The
your
an-
busking?
The
your
answer
thing?
is not bust on Bourbon Street, but my good friend Kevin O'Day and I had the idea that, we'll get 2 drums, we'll go down to the Moonwalk, the stairs at the Moonwalk, and we'll start playing with a tip jar, and we'll make tons of money in no time, right? Well, we were quickly informed that there's like a 50 dB ordinance, and some of the street musicians let us know that we were going to get everyone in trouble by being too loud. So we decided that we better go back to our drum sets and practice instead of trying our hand at street performance. So I tried it for a very, very brief amount of time, and I have much respect for the people who do it, because we realized it's much harder to do than you might think. That was a good question, though. But I have played lots of gigs on Bourbon Street coming up, and tons, of course, obviously, tons of gigs on Frenchman Street, and then started going on the road with Galactic when I think it was 1996. So I was 24 years old when I first started going out on the road with Galactic, and that's been the majority of my adult life.
I mean, there's a lot of cool questions this time around.
Do we want to stay more general?
Let's stay general,
Okay.
so that both music fans and drummers
Yeah,
can benefit.
here's a-
then we'll get into the drummer
I
questions.
think this is actually an interesting question from Mike Hennessy. They want to know your thoughts. Do you think there will ever be a place in contemporary mainstream music for dual or double drumming again, like in the 70s and 80s, i.e., Charlie Daniels Band, Allman Brothers, Grateful Dead?
I mean, the one modern band I can think about is Tedeschi Trucks Band. They used
Yeah,
two drummers, but
and the answer is yes, and it's happening now. And as Nick said, one current modern example that I feel they do it amazingly well, because they play really well together and they listen to each other, and the band is just one of the best bands of all time, in my opinion. And Tedeschi Trucks Band, and that's JJ and Tyler, and those guys playing together is just incredible. And they're doing it, you know, everybody's taking a break right now, but that is a current situation that's going on. I played with the great Zach Nager, who I just heard from earlier, with Carl Denson just several months ago, maybe a year ago now, and doing a tribute to the Allman Brothers. And I got to play several gigs with Carl, with Zach on drums. So I've also gotten to play double drums with the great Idris Muhammad, Sigabu Modalist, Russell Batiste, Willie Green. There's a lot of guys, Johnny Vodakovich, I've played a lot of double drums with. So over time, I've gotten to do it a lot, and I really enjoy it. It's really fun, and it's challenging, because you have to realize that you don't have to try to shine on your own. There's already enough drums going on. One drummer is already enough. So when you've got two, you need to be conscious of not trying to say too much, because there's already a lot going on. So the double drummer thing is super fun. Of course, I've done some double drumming with with my friend Derek Freeman. Done a lot of playing percussion with Mike Dillon. Taku Hirano has sat in with Galactic too. You know, but I've played a lot with Mike Dillon, and love doing that. And when we play, I mean, it's, you know, he's playing percussion, but it's like two drummers up there. It's very, very powerful. So yeah, love doing the double drummer thing.
How many bands are you currently in?
The answer is 0. I am not in any bands right now, unfortunately. But doing things like this, I get to play music and get to interact with you guys. But on Friday, I'll be in a version of my organ trio with Danny Abel and Joe Ashlar outside of Tips. I'm in Galactic, and we do some live streams, and we did one drive-in, which was great. I also have done a number of live streams throughout all this with my piano trio with David Torkanowski and James Singleton. There's also different versions of Garage à Trois that we occasionally do. The Midnight Disturbers usually play once during Jazz Fest. Frequinox. I'm trying to think of things that would have played during Jazz Fest this year. Dragon Smoke, of course. And we'll be doing a live stream for Tipitina's TV. Season 2 of Tipitina's TV is for sale, so if you want to check out tipitinas.tv if you're interested in that. The season passes are for sale. I'm playing the first one with Galactic, which we just did, Halloween night. And I'll be playing the last one with Dragon Smoke of this series. So I was trying to be funny. I guess I am still in a few bands, but we're just not gigging as much as we once were. But we're trying to safely do as much as we possibly can.
Just going straight from that question about all the bands you're in. This one question is talks about musical relationships. It's specifically the musical relationship that you have with Robert Mercurio. Like, they want to hear about that musical relationship that you have with him, and then other bass players, and then how you change your approach with all the different people that you play with.
That's a great question. So Robert Mercurio and I met in 1992, did a jam session at a friend's house. That led to him introducing me to Jeff Rains, and Jeff Rains and Robert Mercurio and I started jamming together in a house on Magazine Street in 1992. And then I wound up moving into that house, and Robert and I became roommates. And then we moved into a house on Melpomene together, and we're roommates. And so, you know, Robert and I would play together, and, you know, we've played together in our underwear on a number of occasions because we were roommates. So, and now we're still roommates on a bus, you know, as we tour around the country and the globe together. So Robert and I have learned how to play and fit together. Our sense of time, our time feel, you know, playing with Robert feels very much like, you know, putting on a glove or, you know, a very comfortable pair of pajama pants. You know, we fit each other very well, and I love playing with Robert. And I've suggested Robert for several gigs. Anders Osborne made a record with Johnny Sansone, and Robert Mercurio played bass on that. And Robert and I are in Dragon Smoke together, Frequinox together. We've played with Leo Nocentelli a lot together. We've played with Papa Molly a lot together. So, you know, Robert and I love playing with Robert. I consider him one of my musical soul brothers. And, you know, we just by playing together so much for so long, I feel like we fit together musically, groove-wise, time-wise, very well. And then, you know, some of the other guys that I love playing with that I feel like are, you know, my brothers in music, Skerrick, Mike Dillon, Charlie Hunter. I haven't played with him in a little while, but Marco Benevento, of course, Robert, Walter, Will Bernard, more recently, Joe Ashlar, Danny Abel. but in the middle there, David Torkanowski, James Singleton. I mean, that trio I've been playing with for a while now. And those guys, you know, I feel super comfortable playing with those guys. So, you know, I'm sure I'm leaving a whole bunch of people out. Ivan Neville, I love playing with. I mean, I feel very fortunate. Eric Lindell, Anders Osborne, who's like my brother. You know, all these people, shout out to Anders, because I started seeing Anders streaming and I was like, oh man, I've got to start doing that. That's brilliant. It's taken me a while to figure out like what I think my niche is, because I've tried doing the play along thing. I don't feel comfortable doing that for like an hour and a half. So I like doing that for two or a couple songs and then starting to talk and then maybe getting into the drumming stuff too. But, you know, Anders has been streaming. He was one of the first to really start doing it, and he's kind of led the charge for me. So shout out to Anders. I love him like a brother. I love playing with him whenever I can. So there's so many guys that I just feel, I feel gratitude and I feel grateful that I have in my life gotten to play with so many great musicians. I mean, George Porter Jr. a lot, and Leo Nocentelli a lot. I've gotten to tour Europe with Maceo Parker, who's one of my musical heroes, you know? I mean, it's just, I'm very, very fortunate and blessed. So.
Oh, let's see. There is a lot of more drummery questions.
Well, we can start getting into some of those
Okay.
if we're
So
not coming up on some of the general questions.
yeah, are there more like, you know, playing music, like music nerd related? So getting more into drum stuff. How did you prepare for your cadence performances with the LSU drum line last year?
That is a really good question. Oh,
That's your phone. You're
I
watching.
was like, what is this delay I'm hearing? I was looking at the phone just to kind of check in, and the stream started playing. So, so that's a great question on how did I prepare for that LSU drumline performance. And you know, I've had a pretty extensive rudimental background. I was very fortunate to study with Marty Hurley at Brother Martin High School here in New Orleans, and then take privately with him. And I've kept up with all that with my rudimental facility, and I still shed a lot of that, practice a lot of Charles Wilcoxon stuff and how that applies to drum set. But for those three cadences that I played with LSU, there wasn't anything in there that I couldn't play already, but stringing it all together and memorizing it was the challenge. And I didn't want to go up there and be reading anything. So it was the memorization that was a challenge for me, because that is a challenge for me because I don't do it on a regular basis. So I would start off like shedding one measure over and over, then two measures, and then make that into a 4-note phrase, shed that over and over and over, and then move on to another 4-note phrase. And then eventually try to string together a whole cadence at a slower tempo. Then I would increase the tempo, and I'd be like, okay, I've got one cadence sort of memorized. And then I would move on to another cadence and do that. And that third cadence, which is called blue bass, I've talked to a lot of guys who do play on the line. Some of them are my students, and they all say that one was the hardest to memorize because it's through composed, nothing repeats. There are actually a couple odd bars, a bar 7, a bar 5, which add up to a bar 12 eventually, so that you stay on the same foot if you're marching. But it was a lot of reps. It was just repeating the repetition of the repeating of the repetition of the reps. And you know, Cameron Robillard, who is the captain of the drum line now, he is one of my students, and I asked him, I was like, man, how did you memorize that? And he's like, man, it was just brute force reps. So, my wife watched me have to do a lot of that. We were doing it. I was doing it sometimes. We'd be at the beach and I'd just put a pad on the counter and just getting in the reps. And I found about, I think, 3 different YouTube performances, and I would play to all 3 different ones because the mix was different. And some of them, the tenors were louder. Some of them, the snares were louder. Some of them, they were walking by, and I would shed it at 50%, 75%, 100%. And I was just throwing myself into as many different situations as I possibly could because I didn't know what I was going to hear when I got into the live situation. So I did do a lot of prep for that, and it was a lot of brute force reps, but to different performances at different speeds, and over and over and over until I felt like I was ready. And even then, I could have been more ready, but we made it happen, and I'm quite proud of that performance. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking that one.
Okay. Let's see. Someone wants to see you play some paradiddles around the kit.
Play some paradiddles around the kit. Well, and speaking of Robert Mercurio, here he is right now. Hey, buddy, you're live. I just talked about you. Were your ears ringing? I'm streaming live, so I'm just letting everybody know I'm answering your call, but I'm going to call you when I get done. I'm like live, but I just talked about you, and great, I said great things about you. So Robert says hi, everyone. So I'll call you when I get out of here, buddy. All right, cool. Okay, play some paradiddles around the kit. Sure. So paradiddles around the kit are great, but I find myself really playing more of paradiddle variations. So, for the people who are watching, paradiddles, who may not be drummers, paradiddles are right, left, left, left. They're challenging to learn, but you get them eventually, and they're very useful around the kit. So you work them up eventually. I'll start playing them faster and faster. So, all right, now that's cool, but what do you do with it, right? So you can split it up between the hi-hat and the snare. Now that's cool, but what's really cool is when you start varying it a little bit. And one of the variations that a lot of people have used over the years is paradiddle and then left, right, left. A lot of people have used that. Idris Muhammad has used it. And then if you double time that, Steve Gadd has used it. Right? So there's so many different ways you can use it. Here it is around the kit. We could go on and on and on, but what I've been doing at the start of this quarantine was then you can take paradiddles and you add flams to the diddles. David Garibaldi has been doing that for years. cool. But what I discovered during quarantine is if you start it on the left hand, then you get the left hand playing the traditional Mardi Gras Indian rhythm. Check it out. So I've been messing around with that a little bit during quarantine, and to me, it's still paradiddles, but there are flams on the diddles, and I'm starting it off the left hand, and I'm moving it around the kit, and I'm trying to make it funky, and I'm trying to make it sound like Mardi Gras Indians mixed with marching bands, mixed with snare drum, bass drum stuff that you might hear in a brass band going by, right? So my wife absolutely loves Mardi Gras. So while I'm hanging out, watching all this stuff going by, it's all coming in through osmosis, and it has been my whole life. And so then when I get to the drums, I might mix some stuff that I heard going by, and then with stuff that I already do, and then come up with some new stuff. So at first I kind of was referencing Harlan Riley, then Johnny Vodakovich meets Mardi Gras Indians, then Mardi Gras Indians meets St. Aug Marching Band coming down the street. So I'm trying to blend those things all the time in an organic way. Right there, I was just trying to fit these things together to make a demonstration, but these things are coming out in my playing all the time. And a lot of these things can be traced back to paradiddles or paradiddle variations. I rarely play just strict paradiddles as they are traditionally written. It's usually some kind of variation. But I like to improvise and make stuff up and let my mind wander and get creative and come up with things. And then once I come up with something that I think is cool, then I'll say, okay, wait a minute, what is this? How am I playing this? What's the sticking? What's the variation? What's the rudiment? And then because I've had an extensive rudimental background, I can quickly trace it back. That way I can memorize it, I can write it down, I can share it with my students and my academy members. So since we mentioned the academy, I will say if you anybody who's tuning in just now, if you want to check out the Academy, there's a 14-day free trial in the description for StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com. And I should mention too, because people told me I didn't mention it enough last time, the virtual tip jar is open. And I don't want to sound like I'm pandering too much, but us musicians have been out of work since the beginning of all this, and we will be.
Get it.
Get it. Nick says, get it, man. All right, so any other questions that have come in?
Let's see. Let's scroll a bit. So he's asking about Street Sweepers Social Club.
Yeah.
How did that name come about?
So that name came from Tom Morello, and I was the drummer asked to play a benefit at Tipitina's, and it was a benefit for Hurricane Katrina, and they had several singer-songwriters come in, and Tom Morello, Mike Mills from REM, the bass player for REM, Steve Earle, Allison Moorer, a few other people, and I was asked to be in the house band and be the drummer to back all these people up. And there was a welcoming party the night before, and I was playing in the band, and it was some New Orleans cats, and I'm pretty sure James Andrews was in the band, Don Vappy, I think, was in the band. And because I'm a huge Tom Morello fan, I think he's one of the most innovative, incredible guitar players of our generation. And I love Rage Against the Machine. And so I was in this band, and I heard that all these artists were going to come over. And this was at the Mother-in-Law Lounge. But at the time, it was the Ernie Cato Mother-in-Law Lounge. And so I knew that these guys might be coming over. So I'm sitting there playing, and I'm pretty sure we were playing Big Chief, right? So, I mean, this is my stream, so I'll tell you a story, right? So we're playing Big Chief, and I can remember playing Big Chief and looking over and seeing Tom Morello hanging out right in the doorway between the music room and the bar, and he was watching the band. And so Big Chief goes a little like this. So I'm playing that, and then we get into solos, and they may have given me a solo, but I start getting into things like this, which again are, I could trace back to the paradiddle if you want. Everything's right, left, and right, left, if you really break it down. A paradiddle is right, left, right, left, right, left, left. What I'm about to play has some right, lefts in it, right? So check this out. I'm gonna start with Big Chief and get into some variations that I can remember playing and looking at Tom, watching the band while he was hanging. Check this out. So we get done with the set, and I go to the bar, order a drink, and I'm hoping to maybe get the chance to meet Tom, right? So there's an opening at the bar, and Tom is turned this way talking to somebody. And so I go to order a drink. Somebody comes up over here and says, "Hey, Stanton, man, that was great, man. You know, y'all sound great. Good to see you." And Tom turns around and he says, "Are you the drummer?" I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "You're my new favorite drummer. Ask anybody who knows me and they'll tell you, I hate drummers, but you've done nothing to offend me." So I said, "Wow, well, this is great. Well, my name's Stanton." He says, "Give me your phone number and I have a session I'm going to call you for." I was like, "Okay, great." Come to find out, he and Boots already had the idea to do this project. And so, long story short, I wound up going out to LA and recording this record with Tom and Boots. And Tom named it Street Sweeper. And then come to find out, I think there might have been another band, and so with that name, so he turned it into Street Sweeper Social Club. And I'm the drummer on that first record, and I was honored to be asked by Tom. I'm proud of that record. It's very cool, and that's the short version of how that came about, but with drums added, because I can't always do that when I tell that story. Cool.
Let's see. Great session. A lot of love. You're getting a lot of love up here.
A lot of love.
We're getting a lot of love.
I love it.
Everybody loves you.
I love it.
What is your most cherished snare drums, considering you're surrounded by a whole bunch of them?
Well, there's a few. This is one. This Spirit of New Orleans titanium snare made by my good friend Ron Dennett. And we've sold a lot of these, and you can get them. And you can call Shane Kinney at Drum Center of Portsmouth. You can call Jim Pettit at Memphis Drum Shop. There's a couple other guys that I know you can call too. Dana Bentley maybe at Bentley Drums. But this is one. Here's one of my Gretsch signature snares that I had outfitted with the vintage the muffler and the key, the key holder. And this is a newer version of the microsensitive. And I've got this set up to play brushes. It's got a skin tone head, but I use this one a good bit here. And then there's just, those are two of my faves. But, and those are two that I use a lot in here. So I love snares. Of course, my Johnny Craviotto 4x14, which is right here, which I don't know if my cords are going to reach, but I can try to reach it.
Oh, I can,
Nick can hand it to me. Since y'all are asking, we'll pull it right here. So this is the first drum that I had that's a 4.5, that one. And Johnny Craviotto told me he wanted to make me a drum. And this is a maple shell. There's Nick. Solid ply maple shell. And when I opened up this drum, I nearly cried because, as you can see, it's engraved by John Aldridge.
Yeah.
And Johnny put this plaque in the center of the drum, but then he also had John engrave my name up here. So this drum is the drum that got me into playing 4.5s. Johnny suggested I check out a 4.5. So that is one of my favorites as well. That's a great question too.
Here, I thought this was a good question because two guys on YouTube kind of inquiring about your Pandero setup.
Oh yeah.
So why don't you talk a little bit about the tuning of the two Panderos? Someone asked what was under it, and I just told them they're microphones. So, but you don't really have much under it.
Yeah. So these are my signature Panderos with LP, and they're designed to be hit with a stick, which is kind of blasphemous to the Pandero tradition of Brazil, where they play beautifully with their hands, and there are virtuosos of the Pandero that just do the most astounding, stunning musical things playing Pandero with their hands. But I was drawn to the sound of it played with a stick because it has jingles and low end frequency, so it sounds like a floor tom with jingles, which I really dig for the Mardi Gras Indian stuff. So I'm always trying to get more jingles and more low end. So this one's tuned low, which I've been doing for years, and then I started tuning this one a little higher, and I use them together. So here's what the low one sounds like, and here's what the high one sounds like. And there I was basically playing an idea based off of left, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. Then I switched the hands. So now I'm going to do that quicker, like every 2 beats. Right? So that's how I'm using those, and I use them. I don't always use them together. But just then, since we were asked about them, I just showed you that's how they sound different or work together. And again, just trying to come up with as many different low end tambo jingle kind of sounds as I possibly can.
One thing that was kind of eye-opening to me when I first saw you tuning up one of the Panderos was that you almost completely detune it, and then you put your knee on it and put like as much weight as you can. It's almost like deadens the head, but somehow it's still has like a really nice tone.
Yeah. So as to Nick's point, I tune it about as low as it'll go, then I put it on the ground, and then I kneel into it. And then stretch the head as much as possible. As long as I've been doing that, I've never, knock on wood, I've never broken a head. And then what that does is it stretches the head. And then it doesn't sound like much when the microphone is not underneath it. So I have a D6, an Audix D6 under here. And I'm just lifting this up so that I can see that, and then maybe you can see that in the overhead. I'm not sure. And then, what do we have under this one, Nick?
It's the same mics.
They both have D6s?
It'd be best to take this one off.
Yeah,
Better. Yeah.
D6s under each of the Ponderos. And that's designed to be a bass drum mic,
Yeah.
but it
This guy
gives
right
a
here.
lot of low end. So shout out to the Audix D6. Makes a fantastic bass drum mic, and it also makes a fantastic floor tom mic. I've got them on my floor toms
Yeah.
and on my Ponderos as well. So super gracious to Audix for providing me with those, and they've been making my Ponderos sound huge for years. So I think it's 7 o'clock. I want to keep you guys coming back, so I think we're gonna end the stream tonight. But I do want to say a shout out to everybody who tuned in. Thank you so much. This is like a dream come true. And, you know, we've been trying to figure out what we're going to do in all of this. This feels very natural to me. I want to keep doing this as long as y'all keep tuning in and be thinking of your questions. Hopefully, if you haven't checked it out already, you'll check out the Drum Academy. Lots of new material on there, the 5-lesson shuffle course. So if you've ever wanted to improve your shuffle, there's all these different shuffles on there, 5 different courses, 5 different lessons on that. Tip jar, if you feel so inclined, is also in the description. And I love hearing from you guys. I'm gonna go back and check out a bunch of the comments and read a bunch of the comments, and I'll respond to some of the questions that we didn't get to in here. So thank you all, and hopefully I'll see some of you next week as well.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get some regulars coming back each week. That's always fun.
Come with questions.
Come with questions. I'll be here unless we get another storm heading our way.
Apparently, there's another one.
Oh, Lord. That's what I heard. I heard that earlier today. Well, thank you guys so much, man. This means the world to me to interact with y'all in these times when we can't interact in person. So I want to say thank you all so very much, and good night.
Be right